Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you follow the channel, you know I just started building myself a new truck. And with the new truck, I need a new flagpole. Now, there was nothing wrong with the old one that we built for the old truck. It's just flying the stars and stripes on the mistake truck now. I needed an upgrade. There were a couple little things about it that I didn't like that I addressed in the flagpole 2.0. So, I'm going to show you how I built it, and today seemed like an appropriate time to go ahead and make a flagpole. When my truck is done, I'll be able to fly the stars and stripes. So let's see how I did it. So I started with a piece of square stock. This is 2.5 inch square by 1/4 inch thick. Now if you have a 2-inch receiver, you'll want to use 2-inch. Or if you've got the smaller, I think it's 1 7/8. You can use that too. You don't need a big truck to put a flagpole on. You could put it on your family minivan if you want. Process is pretty similar. So we'll put it in just far enough to clear the holes and give us a little bit on the other side of the holes, probably about 1/2 inch. Then we'll mark them. Another piece I got was 1 foot long, so we're going to cut it in half. We'll make it 6 inches long. The longer you make it, the further out it's going to extend from the back of the truck. I wanted to keep it close. So after we cut our square tubing, we'll cut our flagpole. It's a little bit too long for my application. I had a 10-foot piece. I cut about 2 feet off of it. In the pile. So now we're going to drill our holes for our eyelets. We'll drill some pilot holes first. I'm using a drill press. Makes it much easier to get a straight hole all the way through and get it centered on the round pipe. But you could actually do it with a drill and a center punch. Center punch will keep the drill from wandering and drill it out. Drill the pilot hole for the lower eyelet. Now we'll drill the actual size holes. I used 5/16. I will be flying the American flag, so all these measurements are clearly in freedom units. I'll open up the hole in the top. Drop our eyelets down in there. Snug fit. Spin the nut on. Make sure we got our eyelet centered. It's not super important just yet. Spin our cap on the top. Now back to our square tubing. We're going to drill some holes in there for the pin mount. These are pilot holes again. We're going to open them up. Now we'll drill the actual size holes. Now if you just want to put a pin in there, you're done. But we're upgrading. So I'm going to put a nut on the inside. So we're going to tighten a nut and a bolt on there. The bolt is just going to hold the nut in place right now. And we'll weld it in. I can only weld the back side, but it'll be plenty to hold the nut in place. Once it's tacked in there, we'll spin the bolt out. Resist the urge to touch it, or set it on the wooden workbench. And then we'll do the other side. This turns into a game of operation since the other side is a little hot and you don't want to touch it. I couldn't put bolt nuts in at the same time because the bolts I used were too long, they would have hit each other. That was all I had at the time. They're actually spare bolts from my Grand Am. Who would have guessed? Me with extra Grand Am parts. Now we can weld the nut on the inside of the other one. We did pretty good resisting the urge to touch the last hot bolt. Let's see if we can do it again. Really pushing our luck here. Success. So now we're on to the flagpole holes. We're going to drill 2, 1 on each side. And the reason for this is I want to give the upright pole 2 places to be welded to. If I just weld it directly to the top, it's going to be pretty weak. You'll have 8 feet of it pulling against that one welded area. If I drill the hole and drop it down through both pieces, then I can weld it at the very bottom and then 2.5 inches up. You give it a lot more stability. So we're going to use 2 different methods. We're going to use the old hole saw, then we're going to use the newer technology step drill. See which one I like better. Turns out they're both about the same. Got the job done. So now we have the assembly in the back of the truck. Take a precise measurement. A look-see. Yep, looks good. Let's tack it up. Throw a couple tacks in each side. Then we're going to pull it off, weld it on the floor. I don't need to throw any more sparks with the dirt nollie. Now it's on the floor, we can easily weld all the way around it. Weld half, turn it around, weld the other half. And we can flip it over and weld the bottom on our forklift / frame rack / welding table. Now we have to tighten up those eyelets. About the only place you could have gone wrong here was if you'd weld the eyelets on the wrong side. They're opposite the side that goes into the trailer hitch. Of course, if you had gotten it wrong, we could have spun them around. So that's why I didn't weld them up yet. Because with my luck, I'd have them in the wrong place. Now we'll tack them in. Tack the nuts on the bottom. And we'll tighten up the cap on the top. Click. Cut off the excess of the eyelets. Flush with the nut. And we'll grind it smooth later. Same thing with the bottom. And we cut a little square out of some scrap steel to cover up the hole in the back so you can't see the pole going through our block. Now this piece was made out of extra parts from the Mustang, so if any part of this flagpole breaks, we know what it's going to be. Now we handed it off to the painting gnome, and he painted it all up for us. Now it's time to install it, see how it works. Start our bolt, tighten it up, pretty solid. Top clasp on. And clip the bottom one on. And that's it. This job's pretty easy. All you really need is a sawzall, a welder, and a drill. And you can do this project at home. It also helps if you have a painting gnome. Unless you like painting. I don't. So maybe you caught some of the subtle differences in this flagpole over the other one. First thing is, this one's tilted back just a little bit. Before, it was at a 90-degree angle to the hitch. Well, the truck has a little bit of a rake stance, so that put the flagpole leaning forward. It used to kind of get tangled up every once in a while when I stopped. So now that it leans back a little bit, and that should keep it from untangling. Then when I start driving it just unfolds. Now I went with the bolt in here instead of our pin because when this is in here it's a little bit sloppy, so it starts to rock side to side. With the bolt in there, it holds it nice and tight. It doesn't rock at all. Now I don't need a bolt on the other side. I basically put them both in there so that if for some reason this one ever strips out, I can start using the other one. Just gives me a little more time with it. If that one strips out, I'll just drill them out and put a pin in there and keep using it. But it should last for quite a while. Now, I did grind all the weld smooth, bevel the edges over a little bit before I handed it off to the painting gnome for him to paint it up for us. I probably would have had it powder coated, but I was kind of on a timetable. I wanted to get this video out for you. If you want to know how I decide how tall to make the flagpole, it's pretty simple. I designed it so that it would fit on an angle in my bed from one corner to the other. So it's its maximum height that I can put it in my bed with the bed cover closed, in case I want to go anywhere and just leave it in there and not have to worry about it. Which is also why we had to get rid of the cap at the top. I cut this one the same size as the other one, and once I put the cap at the top, it was a little bit too long with the bed cover I have on the truck. So I had to take it off, I welded up the hole, beveled it up a little bit up there just to make it look nicer, and then painted it up. It'll function just fine. The cap was only there to keep the water from getting in it, so me welding it up does the same thing. It's also just the right height that short little me can reach the top of it to put the flag on when it's mounted on the truck. But I suppose there's no limit to how high you can go. I do believe that when it's on the truck it's 11 feet tall from the ground. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.